Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday to you here, April 17th, 2025. I have all your stories for your rush hour ride to work. And boy, we're almost at Friday, so just hang in there. A lot to get into, very eclectic. We're going to discuss the sad news that Firefest 2.0 has been postponed. Not canceled, just postponed, although they don't know where it'll be. But hey, third strike's the charm. Is that how it works? Either way, we'll get to that. And speaking of things postponed, Haley Joel Osment had his skiing vacation postponed as he got nabbed for public intoxication. He sees dead people, and now he sees a court date. Plus, the arson motivation has been revealed, that with Governor Shapiro's mansion that was burnt on fire, that lit on fire by the arsonist. We'll share what Governor Shapiro has to say. And this Blake Lively subpoena, the mysterious subpoena. We actually, this is one of those stories at first you go, oh, it sounds a little crazy. There's nothing to it. But subpoena, where the F is the subpoena? And by the way, the more you look at the spelling of subpoena, the more it doesn't even look like a real world. So did I spell that right? I have no idea. There's so many O's and E's. Is it Greek? Who cares? Point is, we're going to listen to a very credible lawyer explain what they think is going down with the subpoena that really cracked this case wide open. And then we're going to go down to El Salvador and hear from the Maryland senator who's returning empty-handed. Plus, we hear from the terror czar. Yes, this is the world we live in where our country has a terror czar. And he explains that if you are aiding the return of the El Salvadorian man who was sent there, and now that the Supreme Court has ruled 9-0 illegally, if you're aiding in him, then you are also aiding in terrorism. So what does that mean? Does that mean you're going to send me to El Salvador too? Is that what's going on? We'll get into all these stories and more. It's all happening right now on The Rush. Well, I told you guys if Firefest 2.0 happened, we were going to try to have boots on the ground to give an update on it. But it looks like Firefest 2 actually didn't even get off the ground. At least Firefest 1, they had a couple ham sandwiches, right? Or cheese sandwiches, whatever it was. Either way, on pause after venue drama. Organizers claim Mexico stole their peso. I actually feel bad for Billy McFarland. Look, the guy's got a brand name to him. All he needed is some eccentric billionaire to come on. Rather than have Jeff Bezos send his girlfriend into space on a rocket, maybe Jeff Bezos should be teaming up with Billy McFarland and throwing Firefest 2.0, Amazon, you know what I mean? Either way, let's have a listen to ABC News as they love to dance on the grave of Billy McFarland's Firefest career.
The organizers of Fire Festival 2 say it is postponed. The event was supposed to happen in Mexico from May 30th to June 2nd, but a message sent to ticket holders says, and we'll quote it for you, "The event has been postponed and a new date will be announced. We have issued you a refund. Once the new date is announced, at that time you can repurchase if it works for your schedule." Firefest founder Billy McFarland had insisted the show would go on after some public back and forth with Mexican officials who said they were not aware of any event. He was convicted, by the way, of wire fraud in connection with the original failed festival.
Okay, all right. He tried his best. Am I the only one defending? No, look, he served his time, He's paying retribution. Now, the thing that really sucks here is that he got hosed. According to what he says he has video of him interacting with the officials. He said he spent hundreds of thousands in pesos to get certain contracts and permits. And yeah, like I said, he's got all that on video. So I say get CoffeeZilla involved. And if Billy was operating in good faith and had this thing planned, I'd like to see that evidence out there because he's really not that trustworthy, and he knows that, so he's got the evidence. Share it, right? I don't know. Here's how they went wrong. They promised a lot of DJs, all right, if the show does well, you'll do well. What they need to do is raise a hell of a lot of money and pay for the music in the talent first. If you get some talented people on the bill and pay them up front, people will show up. They're going to show up for Firefest 3.0, and I'm going to be covering it. I tell you that. All right, in more serious news, the arsonist for Governor Josh Shapiro said a few different things that was very troubling in his 911 phone call, including saying that he believed the attack, I guess the attack is now believed to be revenge for where Josh Shapiro stands in the Gaza conflict. He thinks because Josh Shapiro is pro-Israel that he's responsible for a lot of the death and despair that has come out of that. And again, I'm here to just reiterate, you can't be doing illegal things, right? We have the First Amendment right, and we have the right to protest peacefully, right? Not to light someone else's house on fire, because this arsonist, that's a terrorist move. That's the move of a hate crime. You don't do that. That doesn't help your cause whatsoever. It's either anti-Semitic or it's just inducing fear. It's all of the above, really. And either way, here's what Josh Shapiro had to say. I mean, this is just days after he saved his family's life. I mean, just imagine what's going through this man's head, knowing that if the circumstances were slightly different, he's having a slightly different speech at this moment, right? Just imagine. Horrible. Here's what he had to say last night.
I said after the assassination attempt on the president in Butler, I said in Altoona after we captured the individual who shot and killed the U.S. healthcare CEO, and I said on Sunday that this kind of violence has no place in our society, regardless of what motivates it. This is not how we resolve our differences, and this is not okay. This level of violence has to end, and it has to be roundly condemned by everyone.
And then he goes on to say, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, there's just no place for political violence. There's really no place for violence of any kind. If you guys know me at all, I'm such a pacifist. I see this and you go, you can't act out and think you're doing something good when you're doing a terror move and think that you're some sort of martyr. Like, that's not how you get your point across in a society that operates with free speech. You know what I mean? Use your voice, not terrorizing a family with Molotov cocktails. Well, in other news, Haley Joel Osment from The Sixth Sense was arrested for drunken skiing. Now, I don't know for sure if he was on the slope when he was arrested. It happened just before 2 p.m. And again, I don't know. It's one of those dilemmas. Like, are you better off? You shouldn't be drunk driving by all means. In drunk skiing, you could hurt yourself and you could hurt others. Now, was this one of those instances where he had a drink in the hot tub? You know how it is. You're at the ski chalet. Next thing you know, someone gives you one of those Smirnoff ices and you're getting arrested. I don't know what the case is. I don't know his blood alcohol level. But if we get more information on this, we'll let you guys know. You can't be drunk on the slopes. Come on. What are we doing? Today's podcast is sponsored by Rula. Telehealth has made mental health care more convenient and accessible for millions of people. Rula is on a mission to make high-quality mental health care from a licensed professional easy and affordable. They take most major insurance plans, and the average copay is only $15 per session. You can now get the quality care you need when you need it at a price you can afford. Rula is committed to supporting you and staying with you every step of the way on your mental health journey, from finding the right therapist to helping you schedule appointments and monitoring your progress. Rula is there to help. Thousands have already trusted Rula to support them on their journey towards improved mental health and overall well-being. Head on over to rula.com/rush-hour to get started today. After you sign up, they ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them our show sent you. Go to rula.com/rush-hour and take the first step towards better mental health today. You deserve quality care from someone who cares. All right, Blake Lively talk. Now, there's this subpoena that's been floating around that was used to gain access to the text messages that were leaked by Stephanie Jones. But there is no subpoena that anyone has seen on the defense, on Justin Baldoni's side. Well, now we have Keith Davidson and Stuart Albertson, our very good friends over here at Ask Two Lawyers, Starsky and Hutch, they're good cop and good cop, interviewing Ron Zambrano, partner with West Coast Trial Lawyers. Very interesting stuff, as Ron explains that he actually thinks this subpoena might have either been made up or possibly just not filed correctly. Either way, this could be new blood for Justin Baldoni's side. Have a listen.
Somebody has taken.
Yeah. So I think because of the level of production, there's still, even with this prophylactic subpoena, there's still, I think, a very good argument that this was just, made up to cover up the let's call it conspiracy, I guess.
So Ron Zambrano is arguing that the subpoena may be made up, if I'm listening to this correctly, because, Stephanie Jones has these text messages from a phone, but the phone was her employee. So how does she just leak them? Would that be illegal? And so they say, well, no, if it's a subpoena, we can get them, but no one knows where the case number is or the file number that would attach to that subpoena. And folks are wondering, like, can this be thrown out?
To do this.
So let's say somebody files a lawsuit. Let's say I want to file a lawsuit. I want to get your phone records, Ron. So I file a lawsuit against Stewart, and I file it in state court. I never serve you with the lawsuit. I don't serve Stewart with the lawsuit either. And then I just issue a subpoena. Well, I'm not suing you. I'm suing him. But I issue a subpoena to you. And so it goes to you. I mean, I guess my first question, before we even get to the mechanics of that, the first thing, just within the context of the Lively Baldoni thing, is if somebody filed a lawsuit for the purpose of issuing a subpoena, how do they know to issue the subpoena to Stephanie Jones? Why be so specific? Why issue it to her and not, I don't know, other witnesses in the case?
Now, before the smart person answers, I'm going to give my dumb public school education answer, because they knew what was on Stephanie Jones' phone. That's my guess. Stephanie Jones, she's like, I got to get dirt on my employees. She knows she can log into their phone because the employee just quit or got fired or whatever, and says, oh my gosh, I got all of this. And they say, whoa, we need to do this the right way. Let's find a way to subpoena for this. I mean, they didn't just randomly say, hey, you're an old PR person, we want to know what's on there. No, because as far as we know, no one else had their phone subpoenaed. Oh, how rich.
Because it was filed for an ulterior motive. It was filed for an ulterior motive. If there's a real lawsuit that existed prior to the CRD complaint, it was filed with an ulterior motive because it was so directed at Stephanie Jones. And the problem for Manette Phelps is that a judge may go, what else did you do with this? What else were you able to procure using this sham subpoenas or
wow, calls it a sham subpoena. Gosh, I mean, look, we obviously know what they think about this, but boy, I mean, it's just wild in our world, in this legal world, that they can't track this thing down.
Lawsuit, rather, and just for the purposes of forcing or tricking people into giving you stuff, assuming it went beyond Stephanie Jones. Because that's what I would do as Friedman. I'd be like, wait a minute, if you did it with Stephanie Jones, did you do it with Jennifer Abel? Did you, who else did you give this stuff to? Because you shouldn't have done that in the first place.
I think this has given a new life to the Baldoni team, because this is something they can really dig into. And, Manette, they're a very well-respected firm, huge firm. We all know them as lawyers. And again, we want to preface this by saying if this occurred, I mean, this still needs to be developed. But if there was a sham subpoena or a subpoena that wasn't properly served or given notice to everybody or just used as a way to get a bunch of information without anybody knowing about it at the time, I think that the court's going to be pissed off about this. I think that Justin Baldoni, I think he has Wayfair, all of them, they have claims themselves against the lawyers who I feel were doing a really good job at coming after them with these privileges they were outlining in the 12B6 motions. And now it's kind of flipped the script on all of that. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. So assuming there's a sham complaint for an ulterior motive that created this subpoena, this one subpoena we know about, I believe it would lead to a finding of the district court judge saying you engage in self-help. Everybody in the country knows you do not engage with that. It could subject Manette Phelps to be, I think, if Friedman gets him pissed off enough, disqualified from the case.
Wow.
For engaging in self-help. And that's on the high end, right? That's the most extreme thing. Maybe a more extreme thing may be evidentiary sanctions, but I don't think that's really on the table. Or at least some type of monetary sanction for really creating this lawsuit that was a waste of judicial resources in the first place, even though nothing happened. I mean, you still had to file it. You still took court time. They probably violated the rules by not giving notice to the consumer, because when you file a subpoena they reveal someone else's records. Well, Stephanie Jones was at that point the publicist. So she should have given notice to, Manette Phelps should have given notice to consumer, to Baldoni, like, hey, we're asking for these text messages about you. And then Stephanie Jones herself, just from an ethical standpoint, should have given notice. So there's a lot of There's so much shadiness going on.
Shadiness indeed. So if you want to check that out, go to Ask Two Lawyers on YouTube. They do a fantastic job. And again, these aren't just random quacks giving conspiracies. They're all lawyers, and they're going, yeah, this whole thing is a sham. Now, does a sham mean it's illegal? And I guess it really comes down to what the judge thinks about this. All right, we're going to dive into the immigration story here. Senator from Maryland, Chris Van Hollen, went to El Salvador, really took the bull by the horns on this one, to try to get in touch with Abrego Garcia just to see, A, if he's alive, his condition, and try to find out what they can do to get him out of jail. Here is a piece of what was said. And again, if you want more of this content, we got it on the Rush Hour with Dave Neal on Instagram and TikTok. I shared this as it dropped. So for all breaking news, you can go to the TikTok for that. But here is the senator in El Salvador explaining exactly what went down.
So I asked the vice president if I could meet with Mr. Abrego Garcia. And he said, well, you need to make earlier provisions to go visit CCOT. I said, I'm not interested at this moment in taking a tour of CCOT. I just want to meet with Mr. Abrego Garcia. He said he was not able to make that happen. I asked, he said he need a little more time. I asked him if I came back next week, whether I'd be able to see Mr. Abrego Garcia. He said he couldn't promise that either. So I asked him if I could get on the phone, either video phone or just a phone, and talk to Mr. Abrego Garcia. So I could just ask him how he's doing so I could report back to his family. He said he couldn't.
And again, he said he couldn't arrange it that day. And I said, could I come back next week? And he says he wasn't too sure. Now, it must be very hard to get into this prison system because clearly he flew all the way there. He's a senator from Maryland, the state in which this guy was taken from without due process. Clearly, it must be hard to get into this prison. Whoops, I guess not, because 2 weeks ago, Kristi Noem was there.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem was in El Salvador yesterday to tour the prison where over 200 Venezuelan migrants with alleged gang ties were deported to earlier this month. Now, the Trump administration is currently arguing in federal court that it was justified to deport the migrants under the Alien Enemies Act.
So there she is. All this taxpayer money was spent to get her into this prison system. But when a senator shows up asking questions to make sure due process is followed, especially after the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 to get this guy back, I think this is a big deal. And you might say, Dave, well, these aren't American citizens, so we shouldn't worry about it. But I'm going to show you in a couple of clips the terrorist czar basically saying, if you're going to try to help this guy get back into the country, you're aiding a terrorist. And what do we do about terrorists? We send them to El Salvador. So will we be sending American citizens to this prison? It sounds far-fetched, and yet Trump just 2 days ago told the El Salvadorian president, build 5 more of these. We want to start sending more people over here. So let's go to the senator. This is what he had to say after returning from his trip empty-handed.
Well, my goal is to keep a spotlight on this issue until justice is done, until the 9-0 opinion by the Supreme Court is implemented by the Trump administration, which is ignoring entirely that order that they need to facilitate his return. I asked the folks at the embassy whether they'd been ordered by the administration to do anything to facilitate his return. The answer was no. So they're clearly not in compliance.
I just want to underscore what you just said there, that you were told by the U.S. Embassy in El Salvador that they have received no request from the White House or from the Justice Department, from any other entity in Washington, asking them to take any steps to obtain the release of Mr. Abrego Garcia. Presumably, it's the local U.S. officials at the embassy there who would be the relevant point of contact, first point of contact for the U.S. government trying to attain that outcome, correct?
Well, that's exactly right.
There it is. That's exactly right. So that's Trump's administration violating the Supreme Court order, which essentially means democracy is no longer functioning as we know it. I mean, that's what it means, right? We've waited for weeks to see as these cases go up the ladder, will they agree to listen to what the judges have to say or not. Now, the lower court is in the process of putting sanctions and holding people contempt, which basically means they're going to find out through depositions and sworn statements who's at fault here, and somebody might go to jail over this. No, not the El Salvadorian jail, the jail in our country. Who's going to be the fall guy for this as they continue to skirt blame? It's a real solid question, and you might wonder, Dave, what's the big deal here? This guy's a bad guy. Prove it in court through the due process. That's why we have it, right? So that you can have your fair trial. We don't just send people on planes, even though judges said turn those planes around. We just don't do it because right now it might be some people whose names you do not know. And then next it's going to be maybe a political protester or someone who's organizing a rally or, God forbid, somebody who's running in a different political party than yours. Where does the line get drawn? So I'm going to share with you right now. And again, this is a super sad story, but this is someone whose daughter was murdered by a migrant who was here illegally in 2023. Now, why is this interesting? Well, this has nothing to do with the due process issue. And this is one of the problems I'm running into, reading some comments from people, is that people kind of are having a hard time, maybe just not being educated enough on what the actual issues are, right? I don't know Albrego Garcia. I just know that he did not receive due process and go through the system in a way that's ethical or even legal in our country. They're just rounding people up and putting them in detention centers or shipping them to foreign prisons, and they're allowed habeas corpus. They're allowed the response with in front of a judge, and they're allowed to appeal that. And that's what makes our system work. If there's one bad actor, they can appeal it, and we can try to get this thing figured out the right way. So what I want to share with you is the White House bringing out somebody's mother to share a completely different story. And by the way, due process should exist if you commit a crime in our country. Studies have shown that immigrants commit less crime than natural-born citizens, mainly because they, for the most part, don't want to get in trouble. But we live in a country of 330 or 50 million people. We have a lot of people in our country. So there will be sad examples of cases like this. Have a listen.
And to have a senator from Maryland who didn't even acknowledge or barely acknowledged my daughter and the brutal death that she endured, leaving her 5 children without a mother and now a grandbaby without a grandmother, so that he can use my taxpayer money to fly to El Salvador to bring back someone that's not even an American citizen.
So I understand her pain, right? She lost her daughter, and you think, well, that must have been completely preventable. Absolutely. Most crimes are, right? In some way or another. But this has nothing to do with the case of due process. Really, when you want to get down to the brass tacks of it all, we need to use our tax dollars to fly across the world in order to keep democracy stable in our country. And that's what the senator is doing, right? He's flying to El Salvador at great risk, mind you, to make sure he gets answers because we're not getting them from the government. Her case, as sad as it is, has nothing to do with due process. It is a completely different issue because it's not an issue of whether or not people should be here legally or illegally. I think there's been a resounding sort of response that there's been a crisis at the border with illegal immigrants, and yet we have to have rules in our country through the immigration judge system that processes people so that they can check and vet who's here, who can become get a pathway to citizenship versus not. So anyhow, you have to understand the difference here. And I think with a lot of people, the way their brains react, they have a hard time separating the two. And they go, well, because somebody killed someone over here, all immigrants or even all illegal immigrants are bad. And it's more a case of, can we hold up democracy so that it works itself out? If Abrego Garcia is a bad guy and there is evidence of that, bring that to court. Let the people see. And yet, this is what we're getting right here. Super, super scary stuff. Here is our border czar, who, by the way, is from the United Kingdom. Are we allowed to have border czars from other countries? Explaining that if you support the removal of this guy from El Salvador, you're aiding a terrorist. Have a listen to this.
This is where we are today. President Trump, Stephen Miller, Kristi Noem, Tom Homan are trying to keep us safe, but the other side of the aisle is on the side of the terrorists.
Oh, fuck.
I realize that the taxonomy of politics in America is dead. It's not left and right. It's not even Republican or Democrat. There's one line that divides us. Do you love America or do you hate America? It's really quite that simple. And we have people who love America, like the president, like his cabinet, like the directors of his agencies, who want to protect Americans.
So let me get this right. The senator who flies to El Salvador to uphold the Constitution, this guy is saying doesn't love America, but the president who's knowingly distorting a 9-0 response by the Supreme Court, a Supreme Court that he loaded in his first term, right? He's got at least 3 of those Supreme Court justices that were supposed to side in his direction. They've all said this is wrong. They've all said this is wrong. And yet they're trying to gaslight us to believe that the senator going to El Salvador to fight for the Constitution is the bad guy. I reject that. I reject that.
And then there is the other side that is on the side of the cartel members, on the side of the illegal aliens, on the side of the terrorists. And you have to ask yourself, are they technically aiding and abetting them? Because aiding and abetting criminals and terrorists is a crime in federal statute, Rob.
Well, I mean, does that not make you irate? Does that not make you irate? Wanting democracy to be respected, wanting the Constitution to be listened to, is now aiding terrorism. Wow. Doesn't really, and again, and now and to think that we've got this reporter right here. Yeah, okay, that's a great idea. Oh, fuck off. What are we? Luckily, you guys are smart enough. And I think most audiences are. Luckily, you're smart enough to see exactly what's going on here, saying you're either for our country or you're against it. And I think I can speak for myself and all of our audience. We are for our country and the fabric of democracy that holds it all together. And that ain't it. All right, we'll be back this afternoon. Stick around. Hit the like button. Leave a nice comment. Join us on Patreon, private membership community. Every morning I go live on Patreon for a couple hours. Patreon.com/Dave Neal. You can join me on the private live stream or follow us on Instagram or TikTok. We'll see you later. I'm Dave Neal, and this is The Rush.